Oh. Well, hello to all of our people. I have been creating content for a course called Sustainable Habits and Self-Knowledge for Living Our Best Life. And we're on day 21. And we're at the point now where we're observing ourselves in the essence of our boundaries or lack thereof. And during my own journey of creating this content for people, I realized that I definitely need to work on this boundary. What are boundaries? How do we set them safely without guilt and all of that? So, of course, I've reached out to Mike because he's my man of wisdom and he always knows how to explain things in a way that I understand them. So, I'm just going to leave the floor to you, Mike, and see what you can come up with.
All right. Well, in my own personal journey, boundaries has been a big thing for me to incorporate into my life. So, in a real simple way of looking at this, boundaries are really those things that we need to put into place in order for us to be able to live our life to the fullest and to not allow certain people or situations to take our energy away from us and our power away from us. And we're all guilty of pushing people's boundaries, and we're also very guilty of letting other people overstep our boundaries. And a lot of time we do this because we think that's what we are supposed to do, and we let people in past our boundaries because they need it, or we think they need it, or we think it'll make them happy, or maybe they'll like us more if we do this. But deep down inside, we start to realize that I'm not fulfilled, I'm not happy, I'm drained, I'm exhausted, or whatever it is that is happening to you, because you really have given your power away to somebody else. And and if we look at sort of how pain and disease starts in the body, it actually starts at at the level of the spiritual self first. So that moment when you say yes to something, but really deep down inside you really wanted to say no. So you've released, or you've let somebody through a boundary that you've set because you wanted to make somebody else happy. And then that starts to create a vibrational disresonance through you and through your system, which then leads to a mental reaction. So then our belief systems and our behaviors start to get triggered off to make us realize that, hey, I've agreed to do something that I'm really not comfortable with doing. But again, we've trained ourselves very well to learn to just quiet those belief systems down, even though they're trying to warn us. And then we still follow through with it. Then we typically will have an emotional reaction. And that emotion can sometimes be anger or fear or guilt or worry or whatever the emotion is that arises. And again, this is that third step within our mind, body, and spirit to help us realize that we are doing something that's not in alignment with who we are. And again, for the most of us, we usually talk ourselves out of that emotional response and still move forward with what it is that isn't in alignment with us. And then it will typically will manifest as a physical symptom. So a lot of the times that could just be maybe your neck seizes up, or you get back pain, or you can't sit up, or anything like that. Because you know what? We can't disregard physical pain when it happens. We pay attention to it. But again, the wonderful thing about this though is that when we realize that we've let somebody push our boundaries and push us into a place that we're not comfortable with, we can still change that. We can still make that change and that decision to change how we're reacting, or to change what it is we are choosing to do in accordance to whatever the boundary push was.
I love how you just explained that, because the funny thing is I noticed a bit of a knot in my back right back here the day my husband started to feel not so good. It started with a little rash right up here, but he had also found these like little bumps on the back of his neck. So of course he's gone to a place where it's like, I'm just full of cancer. I know that's what he was thinking. And I was busy, but I felt like, oh, I got to be the people pleaser and the fixer. And I just immediately got this knot in my back. But like you said, talk yourself out of it. Threw on, some deep blue, went on with the rest of the day. He ended up going to the doctor. That all got sorted out. But today, in the mix of, I noticed that I crossed my own boundary, that I probably crossed some others yesterday. And now I'm having a hard time taking a deep breath. And that pain in my back is more like just a straight line of pay attention. That is what
Yes.
it is. So it is very interesting. So I'm glad we're here and having this conversation, because our whole month in the content that I've offered is about observing ourselves, looking within. And what do you say about like not always having the answers? Like, I know I can look up the answer to why my back is hurting right now in an emotional, spiritual place.
Mhm.
But for some people who aren't in that space yet, they haven't identified with their spirituality yet, what would be your advice to them as to, if you're feeling that physical pain, what should you do next?
Well, if these people aren't in tune with their body and can't sort of figure that out for themselves, that's when people who do energy work and spiritual healing can be a huge help to them. That's a role I've assumed in this lifetime, and it's up or people will come to me and utilize my services to help them identify what it is in their life that is actually manifesting as the physical symptom they are going through. But if somebody is, even if they're just slightly in tune with their body, my suggestion is to just focus in on the area of pain or discomfort and feel yourself as if you're almost like you're shrinking that pain down as small as possible. So maybe you'll get it down to the size of a grapefruit. Maybe you'll get it down to the size of a golf ball. Maybe it'll even be the size of a pinprick. It doesn't matter how small you can make it. Again, it's really just about trying to use mind over matter to concentrate that pain in as small an area as possible. And once you get that pain into as small of an area as you can then just ask yourself, what is this pain really about? Where is this pain really coming from? What is it I'm not recognizing in my life or in my current situation that is manifesting as these aches and pains in the body? And for myself, because I do have the extensive training in the consciousness of the body, I know that if we just look at the back itself, each vertebrae in the back represents a different aspect of our consciousness or our personality. So depending where the pain is in somebody's back, I can relate it to that knowledge, and we can really begin to understand on a much deeper level as to what it is that's actually transpiring in that person's life that is now manifested as the physical pain. And this type of physical pain isn't the pain that typically happens from an injury or like an accident or physical trauma. This is pain that it just kind of seems to manifest out of nowhere.
I'm glad you mentioned that too. Do you remember right when COVID kind of first started, we were in lockdown and you were doing an online course? You had taught that. You had taught about the visualizing the small pinpoint. I think, but then you had added, and maybe that was if you had a partner, visualizing them pulling it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't believe I forgot about that. But there you have it, people. There are all kinds of education and services and healers out there in different forms that are willing to help us through this journey. So sometimes it's about putting the ego aside for a minute and allowing somebody else in to help you hold your hand and heal. So I appreciate
I'll
that.
add something to that.
Mhm.
Is even myself, even though I do have all this training and this knowledge, it's still very important for me to receive treatment from somebody else who has no attachment and has no involvement in what's going on in my life. Yes, I could do it myself, but even for me, it's very important to have that outside energy and that outside influence um, help me to see things in a different way, or to see things that maybe I don't want to admit to myself, right? So having someone a third party, again, who has no attachment to your situation or your outcome, it's honestly one of the best things you can do for yourself.
100%. And you can look at it too in a way that, like, let's say you've got a whole hockey team of athletes that are in a professional setting. They're not just an athlete and they're getting paid that big money to do what they know already. They are constantly being trained by several different coaches that are steering them in the direction and the headspace and the physical space that they need to be in. So we all need help. So set the ego aside and ask for it.
Not a sign of weakness. It's not, it's
That's
actually a sign
right.
of strength when you can admit you need help and are seeking that outside of yourself. It's not a weakness.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. I'm just going to stop this recording. You guys, you know how to get a hold of him, and we will talk soon.